But today I'm wearing my public service and pro bono hat, as it were, and we'll be sort of facilitating this training. But we have much more knowledgeable folks doing the majority of our substance today, so I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a second. But if you guys want to put into the chat, your name, maybe where you live or work, and your favorite Halloween costume, either from this year or from a prior year. But I feel like given that it's November 1st, that we have to have a thematic welcome. I'll share that my family, my 8-year-old picked our theme this year. And so we dressed up as gods of Mount Olympus. And I was Medusa, not technically a goddess for those of you who are well informed, but I got an exemption. I had to apply for one, but I received my exemption to be Medusa, and it was pretty fantastic. I'm not gonna lie. So there's my response. I'll pass it to Bob to introduce himself.
Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be. I'm Bob Probasco. I'm the director of the Tax Dispute Resolution Clinic at Texas A&M Law School and have been doing tax controversy for 23 years and these type of things probably since about from the beginning.
Bob, Halloween costume?
I'm sorry, a Halloween costume?
Halloween costume. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Halloween costume, because it was very easy. A blind man. I got a cane, I got a tin cup, disheveled jacket, and I walked around the Halloween party soliciting, and sunglasses, of course. Walked around the Halloween party soliciting donations. And unfortunately, I found out that when you are wearing sunglasses inside, you may misjudge how much scotch you are pouring into your glass.
Excellent. Okay, Emily.
Oh, hi, I'm Emily Yaun. I am at Georgia State Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. I've been there about 7 years. And I also was in the tax clinic as a student. We have been doing in-person pro bono settlement days since before I was at the clinic. And it's one of my favorite things. And so once they started doing them virtually, and I am very, very boring and I absolutely despise Halloween. So I'm not a costume person.
My husband would join you in that. We force him to put on like minor accessories every year, but it's definitely not his holiday either. So he's with you on that one. All right, Spencer.
Okay, I'm Spencer Hitt. I'm a managing counsel with LNA and chief counsel, formerly SBSE. And I'm also one of the leads for our National Settlement Day team and have been on the team since its inception about 6 years ago. Was also one of the founders with Meg and Michelle on the council side for these national events, and kind of just going into our 7th one here. So we're pretty familiar with the process. My Halloween costume in recent years has been whatever, a sidekick for whatever my daughter wants to dress up as. So this year we went with the Inside Out 2 theme. I was Deep Dark Secret. She was, I think, Anxiety, and my wife was Nostalgia.
Oh, I love that. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. I love that movie. It was so good. That is amazing. I might have to steal that for next year. Okay. And thanks for those of you who are introducing yourselves in the chat as well. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the logistics here. Michelle and I will cover some basic stuff, and then we're gonna turn it over to Spencer, who's gonna talk about the IRS side. And I'll start with saying that this project has been a really great experience and very successful, I think, on both ends. But it definitely would not be possible without Spencer and his team. He's got a whole team of folks. Are you still called the Settlement Day Cadre? Is that what you're still calling yourself that?
Yeah, Settlement Day team, cadre, whatever
I love
kind
it.
of.
Awesome. I like Cadre. It's like fancy.
It's fancier. Yeah.
So we've had a really great partnership with them, and I just can't express enough how open they've been to, feedback and how best to make this work, how ready to settle the folks from the IRS have been for almost all of these cases. So it's been it's been a really great experience. I think you counted, I guess, Spencer. I think this is our seventh one, I guess, if that's what you're saying.
Seventh one.
Yeah, so we've kind of seen a bunch of different things now, but nothing that's been something that we couldn't work past. So that's been really heartening. In terms of time commitment, those of you who've maybe done some of these before are gonna laugh at my response to this because it can sort of be what you make of it. It can be a very minor time commitment. It can be, a short phone call with the taxpayer ahead of time, trying to get everyone on the same page, and then, an hour or maybe two meeting with the IRS to talk through the issues. I would say that's probably on the short end. You are absolutely not required to take on the case for full representation if it goes past the settlement day. Nobody's asking that of you in any way. But that said, some people find that once they delve into the case, if it does require follow-up after the initial conversation, that they do feel they want to do that or that it's the right thing to do. And so sometimes it can take quite a deal of time. I think Bob is finishing up one from the summer session right now. So it can take sometimes the amount of time that you feel like you can contribute to the case. And then a lot of these settle really quickly. Like they really do settle in the meeting either, and we'll get into sort of the reasons for that later. So I don't want to, go into all of it right now. I will say on the front end that we've had slightly less of a response to this one than we usually do in the fall. Last year we're over 60 cases in the fall, and we're at about half of that right now going into the fall session. So if you haven't had a case assigned to you yet for this session, you still might. They're still coming in. If for some reason, and Michelle's doing her best to link people up and try to get as many people cases as possible. If you don't get a case this time just because the stars didn't align, in schedule and number of cases, we really do apologize, but we will prioritize you for the next one. If you shoot Michelle an email and say, I'm sort of disappointed, I really was hoping to get a case and I didn't, Michelle will prioritize you on the next round and she will make sure that you get one. We do our next one in the spring. So I just wanted to say that on the front end. The way that the process works is Michelle has like her magic formula where she sort of matches up people's experience levels and their schedules with the specific cases that we get from the IRS. And then she'll send you an email with your team and your case assignments. And so if you haven't gotten one of those yet, like I said, you might still. If you don't get one this round because we just run out of cases, please do bear with us, and we will make sure that you get one eventually. I'm trying to think, Michelle, is there anything else that you wanted to say about the way that we match volunteers up? Michelle has like a very organized, color-coded spreadsheet where she keeps all this information.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm with the tax section. Yes, I have.
Oh, sorry, I should have had you introduce yourself in the beginning.
It's okay. I don't. I was like, okay, thank God, I don't have to introduce myself. So I take all the info that I get from the surveys, and it's just years of experience, background. Sometimes I might look at your bios in your law firm just to get a better sense of your experience. I try to get all that info to match to a case. Again, we're trying to match as many as we can. Sometimes if someone shoots me an email, I'll be like, hey, I haven't received anything. I'll try to like put them on the top of my little queue just because we do get a lot of volunteers. Sometimes they kind of all blur together in my very extensive spreadsheet. But yeah, I don't think anything else. I kind of gave a good rundown.
I see a question coming through the chat. I'll answer that in the chat.
I will send, so I send so I call it a case assignment email, and it comes from my inbox. So it's Michelle Aguirre at americanbar.org. If you can search it, usually, it will go through. Sometimes maybe we could go to spam because it is from the American Bar Association. Usually also like you'll have all your partners, so they'll try to reach out to you guys. I haven't received one. So like, let me see, Ian. I don't think I've matched a case to you yet, but I have to look.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can just reach out to me and Michelle, and we can look it up for you. Okay. All right, well, let's move over to Spencer's going to talk a little bit about how the cases come to us, which I think is really helpful when you're sort of just assigned to this case. It seems like they come out of nowhere, so I think it's helpful to hear how the IRS selects cases and how they come to us before we assign them.
Thanks, Meg. So we get with the Settlement Day team, cadre, get with Michelle and Meg about 90 days out and kind of pick a date or a set of dates that we have here November 13th through 15th. And then we, on our side, the Settlement Day team is kind of the logistical operators on the council side. We're there to make sure the trains are running on time, so to say, and make sure we can fully staff the conferences with pro bono volunteers, revenue officers, or whatever is needed. So about 60 days before the event, we send out notice to all of our chief counsel employees in the field. So now it's essentially, if you've seen the press releases, the LNA field, litigation advisory, which is kind of merged with SBSC and now being high. So we get out notice about 60 days in advance, say we have this event planned, send notice to your taxpayers, here's the instructions on how to request a conference and kind of what the steps are and what you need to do. From that point on, it's on kind of the attorneys and managers pushing their attorneys to do so, to kind of look at their caseload and figure out what cases are going to be beneficial for these events. We're strictly looking at pro se taxpayers, so taxpayers who aren't strictly taxpayers who aren't represented. Every now and then we'll have a taxpayer with a Form 2848 power of attorney, but no attorney of record. For those, we tend to make sure that the conference is going to be productive with that person, or else we won't represent them. But we're trying to limit this to strictly taxpayers who've been unrepresented. So we seldom reach out to your taxpayers who would be interested, see if this conference will be beneficial. And from that point on, we start sending letter invites. We'll make phone calls. We'll shoot emails to taxpayers to kind of gather interest. We might some offices do bulk mailings to kind of all their unrepresented taxpayers. Others kind of use more targeted things to cases that they know that they need assistance on. Usually there's like a miscommunication between what documentation is needed or what issues are needed, or just a difficult time making progress on the case. But we kind of select these cases and send the invites out with the goal the whole time is we want to have a settlement conference to settle the case. We're not essentially using this for discovery purposes or anything. We want to connect the taxpayers to pro bono volunteers to settle the cases. Kind of give you an idea of the numbers. Over the past 6 events we've held, we've connected 295 taxpayers with pro bono volunteers and have settled 201 cases. So we operate at about a 69-70% settlement rate. For every case that comes in, 70% gets settled. So that's really our goal on these, is to get them resolved. The types of cases that come in, you'll see kind of, obviously we get a ton of deficiency cases. Usually it's EITC, substantiation, maybe some unreported income, AUR, retirement distributions, 1099K processing. It kind of spans the scope of deficiency, but nothing really substantial issues. You're not getting any abusive transactions because those aren't usually pro se petitioners. General income tax and accounting issues. So we'll have deficiency. We have CDP. We do get a lot of CDP cases, collection due process, because we do get collection support for all these, and I'll mention them in a second. We have innocent spouse cases, and we've been getting passport cases recently. We've had at least one passport case, I believe, on the past 4 events we've held. So those are the 4 primary cases we get. In terms of where these cases are at, we generally invite cases that are not being actively worked by appeals. So as you know, if a case hasn't gone to appeals by the time we file a petition, we refer the case to appeals for settlement consideration. So, these cases may be pre-answer, these cases may be back from appeals. or we've checked in with appeals and said, hey, what's the status of the case? It's not moving. Let's go ahead and get it back so we can get a conference. But these cases have been past appeals jurisdiction, and now we're kind of in the trial prep status or working with counsel to get the case resolved. And I'll mention that too, because one of the things I kind of want to stress with that is kind of when we get the case and we get over to Michelle and Meg and they pick the assignments for you, these taxpayers have been in contact with probably the IRS, either the exam or collection side. Maybe they haven't talked to a human being because it's been an automated thing or an automated process. They filed a petition with the tax court, so they don't really understand the difference between the IRS and the tax court. They've gone through the Independent Office of Appeals, and now we said you can meet with a low-income taxpayer clinic and do this, and they've talked to the chief counsel. So their heads are spinning by the time they get back to us and kind of where they're at in the process. So, when we set these up and we talk to the taxpayers and we say, hey, here's the opportunity you have to kind of meet with a pro bono volunteer who can provide you free legal advice. They're not connected with the IRS in any way. They're there to assist you in kind of progressing your case. And we explain who they are. It's really important for you. We've had situations where they're like, they don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm there for. Kind of explain where they're at just because they've been through this whole process, and they've been through this whole process unrepresented from the ground up to tax court. So there's usually like a gap or a miscommunication between what's needed to get their case settled and what's actually coming in, and that's kind of where we're at in terms of life cycle. The types of individuals who we kind of loop into these on the chief counsel IRS end of this is obviously, you have the chief counsel attorney or paralegal assigned to the case. Usually the manager is involved if they have to approve a settlement. And they may attend the settlement conference or participate in kind of the exchange of documents before the conference. We also include our revenue officers. Collections kind of a big supporter. We usually get about 30 to 60 revenue officer volunteers for every settlement day event we have. And they will volunteer for conferences and be there to support and explain collection options to the taxpayer and assist with maybe collection alternatives to the extent they can. In addition to getting these cases resolved, we like to treat this as a taxpayer service situation where the taxpayers can hopefully resolve all their issues with the IRS in a single phone call. So we have revenue officers on call. We have our tax computation specialist if we're able to reach a settlement during the call. We have tax computation specialists who can prepare settlement computations, overpayment computations with immediate turnaround, so we can get everything tied up during the conference. We can have the decision documents prepared and back and forth and ready to go. So those are generally the people we have supporting the event, the case types, and kind of on our end, on the settlement day team, we get the cases requests, we send them to Meg and Michelle, and we work on our end to get them staffed with the IRS support they need to kind of get them settled. But we're coming into these to kind of get to, like I said, 70% settlement rate. We want to make sure we can get these cases resolved and not see the inside of the courtroom. I'll kick it back to you now, Meg, unless there were any follow-ups to that.
No, that I think was really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Bob, we had a little topic for you here. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And this will be relatively brief. Meg has already talked about limited scope, that you are expected to be involved up through the settlement conference itself. Some people go beyond that. I went about 3 months beyond that recently, which was not the norm. The other thing I wanted to focus on and just prepare you for is that this is you're trying to facilitate resolution of the case. That may mean you are going to help provide information and organize information to provide to the IRS that hopefully will result in a settlement. It may mean that the IRS is faced with a situation where they think that we're going to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction, or we have a motion for summary judgment, and your role may be to explain why that's happening, explain why they may not be able to fight that, and talk with them about what can happen after that. I've had a few where really they wanted us to tell the taxpayer, you're going to lose. It's okay. They're not abusing you, but this is how you can do it later. Or if it's going to have to go to trial, here's some things that you might want to know about trial. It kind of explaining the process. So it's not always settling, it's not always resolving, but it is helping the taxpayer get through that process, listening to somebody other than the IRS, because sometimes they trust us more than the IRS. Nothing personal, Spencer.
I get it. That's why we invite you on, Bob, because you don't have that big IRS label on your letterhead.
Right. Back to you, Meg.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to talk just very briefly about exciting things like malpractice insurance. So most of our volunteers, the vast majority, work at law firms or other sorts of accounting firms, things like that, and have insurance that covers them for a consultation pro bono experience such as this one. Some don't. Some people work at, universities are common sources of people who do not have insurance or are still in law school and are not barred and obviously don't have insurance. So honestly, the way that we mostly handle that is if you don't have insurance that covers you for this and you're concerned about that, which you probably should be. If you're not, that's also concerning. Then we usually partner you with folks who do. It's a little less exciting because we ask that you don't provide direct, advice or consultation to the taxpayer, but you can still participate in background research. You can still join the calls and observe. For students, this is particularly helpful. It's an incredible experience to watch attorneys who know what they're doing settle in these settlement negotiations. And so we do consider this program to be a training program as well. It's a training program even for people who do have insurance, but maybe have not taken on a pro bono case before and are nervous about it, but don't have anyone that they can shadow. Watching Bob handle one of these cases is pretty much the best education you could possibly get in how to represent a taxpayer on a pro bono basis. So this is a great training program for those who maybe are very experienced but have not taken on pro bono cases. It's also great for those who are new to the career of tax law or considering a career in tax law. And we want this to be an educational opportunity. And the IRS is aware of this. They know that that we're doing this, and we make sure that the taxpayers are aware too. There might be a student observing this call. This person will not speak or share information because they're a student or they're here to observe, just so that the taxpayer knows, who your teammates are and who these people are. So that's one thing. One other thing is that our partners at LATC Connect, the Center for Taxpayer Rights, and I'll drop the link in the chat here. If you take representation cases through them, they do also provide malpractice insurance, and it's possible that they could cover you for this opportunity as well. You can reach out to them and ask, but you can't just sign up for it. You have to actually be vetted and be accepted and take cases through their system as well. So they do have a malpractice insurance. The ABA does not. If you have questions about this and it applies to your situation, please reach out to me. I think you all have my email, but I'll put it in the chat as well. And I'm happy to talk this through with you. I've done this with other folks. The other topic that I'm going to discuss right now is conflicts. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. Most law firms will run a conflict check before you would take on any kind of case, including a pro bono case. In this situation, feasible or not advisable or not possible or it takes too much time. So generally what most law firms have done is share some sort of generic document with the client saying we haven't run a conflicts check, and making sure that the person is aware that you're not representing them. And that you're just here to provide brief consultation. We have attached a copy of what one of the law firm partners that we work with uses, sort of a generic version of that, to the email that Michelle sends out. So you should have a copy of that. If you don't and you have questions about that, let's not take too much time here because it can get complicated. Feel free to reach out to me and we can have a side conversation about that. And then we also share, and Spencer can get more into this later, but we also share when you start your case, the authorization forms from the IRS so that you can talk to the client and get information from them and share information. But I won't go down that road too far because Spencer will do a better job. Let's see, was there anything else I was covering here? Nope, I think that covers it. Spencer, do you want to talk about your the forms on the IRS side?
Yeah, so we developed a form for these settlement day events, kind of understanding, limitations on pro bono volunteers, LITCs being able to accept a client or accept a taxpayer as a client. There's certain limitations on that, obviously, and we want to make this connection and have them get advice without, at the same time, kind of necessarily forcing somebody to take on a client who they may not be able to for their purposes. So we developed a tax authorization disclosure form. It's similar to an IRS form 8821 disclosure statement, but Meg, I'm sure you guys share that out at the beginning and stuff. So yeah, it's in connection with these settlement day events. Like it's essentially an 8821. The taxpayer signs it, and we put on the form the ABA pro bono volunteers who are kind of assisting with the settlement conference, and that just kind of gives us the authorization to start disclosing tax return information. Obviously, we kind of share some very basic information about the case initially, like the issue, the taxpayer name, the docket number, just so you all are aware of it kind of as it's going through. But once you kind of get assigned a case, you need to see the actual files. And they can't always come from the taxpayer because a lot of these taxpayers don't really know what you need or what you're looking for. They don't have it all handy, and we do. So we have the tax authorization form. Get that signed. That's an 8821. It kind of involves no representation, and it just expires 6 months after it's executed. So there's no kind of it doesn't go to CAF unit or anything. It just goes in our legal file, and it kind of just gives us the comfort to taxpayer. We have a written authorization from the taxpayer saying they're okay with us disclosing this return information to you about the case. The other form that I share with Meg that we have is, a lot of times it's a lot easier to get stuff via email. Counsel and the IRS have serious heartburn about emailing stuff, despite kind of what counsel wants and our field counsel concerns about just the expediency of it. There's another form that we have with, if you're kind of familiar with chief counsel notices, this one is 2020-007. There's an email authorization form that the taxpayer can sign to, that you can get that signed in connection with the authorization. Get both to us, and that lets us send encrypted PDFs to you all via email. So we can get both those forms at once. You can make a request to us. We'll get into kind of best practice tips about sharing information next, and Bob will go over that with his expertise. But two forms we have to get signed off the bat. Sometimes our counsel attorneys can get them done. A lot of times the pro bono volunteers will reach out to a taxpayer as soon as we let them know that they're signed. And get it, just kind of give you an idea. When we provide the case conference request to Meg and Michelle, we don't give them the taxpayer name or docket number because they don't need to know it to get it assigned. So it's kind of the first introduction we get once we figure out who's assigned is we will send an Outlook invite to the volunteers, to the taxpayer, scheduling the settlement conference, but we also use that Outlook invite to connect the taxpayer and let them know who the volunteers are. And we provide the taxpayer's contact information. We provide kind of everybody's contact information in that Outlook invite that goes out to everybody. That'll have a Teams or Zoom link for the settlement conference itself. But we make that connection. That one, we get the taxpayer's consent when we send this over to the ABA that says, are you okay with the pro bono volunteers reaching out to you in advance of the conference? And 100% of the time we get a yes answer. So we send that Outlook invite out, we make the connection, and then from that, we start running on prepping the case for a settlement conference. And a lot of times these cases can settle beforehand, and then have the conference because of that. But we make that connection for a couple of reasons. One, because you guys need to know the taxpayer's name, docket number, and information, so that's why we send it out there. And two, it kind of lets us tell the taxpayer these are the pro bono volunteers who are going to be assisting you. When they contact you, it's not a scam. They're not trying to get your information. So, that kind of serves the dual purpose of that. But, we get those two forms signed off the bat, and then we can start getting you all the information to kind of assist the taxpayer and prep the case. So I think we're moving over to best practices now.
Yes. I'm going to turn over to Emily, who's going to start us off on that conversation.
Okay, so Spencer already mentioned, but the types of issues that we see a lot at the conferences are going to be the family-based credit. So things like earned income tax credit is a big one. And then I would say Schedule C issues. So getting the documentation to prove if they had, their business, their gross receipts, and all of their expenses. So I would say for the most part, you don't run into overly complicated issues. But if you are not working in an LITC, you probably don't do a lot with the earned income tax credit or things like that. So thankfully, there are lots of good resources out there. Shout out to, or I guess a plug for the Georgia State LITC, our website. If you're just trying to brush up on some things, our website, if you just Google it, we have a lot of issues that we run into, just kind of IRM sections, code sections, types of documentation you would need, and things like that. If you have access to the effectively representing your taxpayer, that is a great resource to get more of an idea on certain issues. So they'll have all of the things on credits, innocent spouse, things like that. I always tell my students, I'm a big fan of the IRS website. I think they have a lot of really helpful information and it's pretty easy to read, and the IRS publications. So there are a lot of great resources out there, but if you have questions or concerns and you're not coming up with an answer, I would say you can always email any of us on the Pro Bono and Tax Clinics Committee, and we can help you or put you in touch with someone that can. As a last resort, I don't want to give Megan and Michelle too many emails, but you can always reach out to them too if you're not having luck. And I'm sure they can put you in touch with people too. But I would say the big thing is documentation, gathering that. So.
Is that my cue? That may be my cue.
That's the main thing for that. But if anyone has anything to add before moving on, feel free.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
No, I'll just say before, Bob, if you don't know what the issue is in your case and you want help, as soon as you get that, reach out to the IRS attorney. They'll tell you what they need and they'll tell you what the issues are. So
oftentimes I don't feel bad doing it. I will say, what do I need to give you to prove this to you? And they've always been very helpful and they're very specific on what they need. So don't be embarrassed to ask.
That's a helpful tip, Emily, because I think hearing that from a very experienced person like you is empowering. I think a lot of people might not feel comfortable doing that. So sometimes just being direct is actually the best, because everyone, here it's different than other, types of law. Everyone wants to get to the right answer, so.
And that's my favorite question is what do you need to get this case resolved or what needs to happen on this? Yeah.
It's great advice. I love it.
Okay. And actually this by its very nature is going to do that, but you should be aware that there is sometimes a little bit of sensitivity. I know when we go to a calendar call and do the same type of thing at the start of a tax court trial session, as a general rule, we tell the taxpayer, okay, I'm going to work with you. I'm only going to talk to the IRS attorney either in your presence or with your permission, because they could be a little bit concerned about that. It's not easy to do that here, but do be careful in terms of what you're discussing with counsel after you've talked with the client. Clients do sometimes have problems with Zoom and may join by telephone. That creates problems primarily if during the conference they want to put you into a separate little room so that you can discuss it outside of counsel's hearing. I had one of these in which counsel was not familiar with the technology, couldn't figure out how to put people into an individual breakout room, and instead walked out of his office, closed the door, and said, I'll give you 5 minutes alone and close this so I won't be able to hear. But be aware, and you just have to adapt on the fly is what it comes to. Receiving information from the taxpayer, documents from the taxpayer, and talking to the taxpayer ahead of time is crucial. You can go to a settlement conference sometimes without being able to do that in advance, and it may still go well, but the chances are much better if you can do that. And sometimes some of the taxpayers are relatively sophisticated in the sense that they can give you a lot of documents. They have a good understanding. They've got a unique or isolated issue. We had two or three of these events before that had one specific issue was the only thing on the notice of deficiency. And the taxpayer kind of explained it, sent a write-up of what she had put together and was going to give to the IRS attorney. We got that maybe a day in advance, did a little bit of quick research from some outside data sources, walked into the settlement conference, spent 5 minutes on pleasantries, 10 minutes explaining why she was entitled to the deduction. Boom, 15 minutes and we settled the case. And we spent another 10 or 15 minutes just chatting. It was a very nice conversation for the taxpayer because they had settled the case. But getting those ahead of time, you may be able to get them from counsel. You may also be able to get them from the taxpayer. And talking with the taxpayer ahead of time is also very, very helpful sometimes. Talking to counsel is helpful to understand what they're trying to do, because occasionally it's not, if I'm looking at some of the deficiency cases and I look at it and see, oh, it's EITC. Well, these are the types of things that they may be asking about. I already know what those are, but sometimes it's not evident even if I look at the docket ahead of time. So talking with counsel just to understand, for them to tell you, not for you to share any confidences from the taxpayer, but for them to tell you, this is what's going on from my perspective, and this is what I'm trying to get out of the conference. That's useful information, and then you can pass that along to the taxpayer as well. And I think, is this the point for it to go back to Spencer?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm using my son's iPad because my government computer will not let me access Zoom outside of Zoom Gov. So I have game pop-ups constantly that I'm trying to close out. But so going back to me, I think Emily and Bob mentioned it. I think step one, reach out. We're going to give you the issue. You're going to see the notice of deficiency or the collection determination or whatever kind of jurisdictional notice it is. But in many situations, reach out. We'll get emails saying, hey, send me everything, or send me the admin file. And we can do that. But it may be good to just kind of ask first, like Emily said, what's the issues in the case? What do you need? Can you send me, X, Y, and Z specifically? And we can do kind of a more targeted response to kind of go over everything. Obviously send you anything where the IRS would have the burden on, so you can look at that in terms of penalties. But, we want to make sure that you have what you need and you're not being drugged down by looking through administrative records that may not have any relevance to the case. And in many situations on the substantiation cases, like you'll see with Schedule C or the EITC, counsel may have, evidence of some of the elements already. So for an EITC case, we may have already know that the dependent is the taxpayer's child, or the dependent is live with the taxpayer for a year. We may just need to show support. Or, get with us there, or there may just be simply a conflict in the information that taxpayer provided to exam or appeals, and we just need some clarification on it to get the case resolved. So reach out first on kind of the more complex issues, and not necessarily complex, but like CDP or passport, where it's not figuring out what the dollar amount is. Reach out. Because we can give you the records, we can kind of explain kind of where we want to go with the case based upon our conversation with the taxpayer and what we need. Sometimes our taxpayers in collection due process or passport cases are looking for collection alternatives that may be beneficial, and we've brought in a revenue officer to assist us in the conference. And that revenue officer may need some financial data from the taxpayer. They may need them to fill out a Form 433A, collection information statement, and get some other records to kind of facilitate that settlement. So sometimes we can kind of direct you all to say, hey, here's the information we need based upon what the taxpayer wants. If you think it's something different, let us know. But this is kind of where we've been advised on kind of what we need to go. So do that. I mentioned at the beginning that we start getting conference requests starting 60 days out, and they're coming in. I think my head count today was 31. So you guys should have 2 more coming over this afternoon. But we get the conference request in up through the conference, up through the settlement day event itself. So we're still getting conference requests in on the 13th and 14th to the extent we can accommodate them, we will. But these kind of conferences can range from, you could have 40 to 30 days to prepare for the conference and get settled, or you could have a day or 2, depending on kind of what your volunteer is. So kind of where we start this conversation and talking about, getting the authorization signed, passing information back and forth. That's where, we've had some built-in lead time. In other situations, just to give you an idea of what to expect, and Bob mentioned this too, where we kind of have to get somebody in really quickly and you may not have all the lead time to review everything. What counsel generally does during those settlement conferences, to the extent we can't get you information before, is we'll walk through, on the summer conference, we'll walk through all the issues in the case, kind of show all the relevant documents, what we have, go over those with you, say, here's what we believe the issues in the case are. Here's kind of the oral testimony or explanations we may need today to resolve it, because we know we're not going to have anything written. And then kind of go over it, like Bob said, we'll put you in a breakout room if we can figure out the technology. I think we kind of pass along some of the technology tips and everybody gets them, as opposed to just leaving the room. Let you all talk, discuss, and we'll try to work it out then. We're amenable to rescheduling the summit conference if you need more time, so we're not really now down to those days to get the support. But definitely get with us early. So we do the conferences via Zoom and Teams. When the taxpayers can't log in via virtually, they call in and they can't see the screen. So we like to get them everything we're going to go over in advance so they can follow along over the phone. So that just kind of helps us as well. But like I said, if you're trying to get documents, reach out to the counsel attorney who's assigned to the case that you would have seen on the Outlook invite. If you're having trouble contacting that attorney, maybe they've had to go on sick leave unexpectedly, reach out to Meg and Michelle. They'll reach out to me and my team, and we'll get somebody to contact you on it right away, and we'll start backup. And we've had pretty good, when they tell us somebody's not responsive, we can find somebody pretty quickly who can respond and get you guys what you need.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. It's so helpful to hear directly from IRS about all this stuff. So I really appreciate you being here, Spencer. Let's see. So we still have a bit of time. I'd like to pass it back to Emily and Bob, whoever wants to handle this one, to talk a little bit about interacting with the taxpayer and some of the sort of interpersonal or legal issues that might come up there, and how you have worked past those, because I think that's pretty important and helpful. And then we can do the closing part, briefly at the end.
Do we flip forward or what?
How about I start and then you can add what I missed, because I'm sure I'll miss something. I think Bob has already mentioned it some, but with the conferences and working with the taxpayers, a lot of times they're frustrated with the process. They may, as like I think Spencer mentioned, they may have not talked to an actual person throughout all of this. So I try to just kind of explain how they got here and what our goal is, so that they don't feel quite as frustrated, particularly with counsel's office, because we both know that counsel's office, we just want to get to the correct decision, but the taxpayers don't always feel that way. They sometimes feel like they're getting picked on and things like that. So letting them know what our goal is to get to the correct result. And then I always like to mention what happens if it's not a result that they like, because again, sometimes they just don't qualify for the credit or they can't provide the documentation. and they're going to end up with a amount that they can't pay. So I always sprinkle in a little bit about collections in the future, just so they feel a little bit better that just because they get this bill, that they're not going to have to pay all of it in the end. Since I'm with an LITC, depending on the situation, sometimes we can accept them as a client. If you're a volunteer, that's not really the case, but you can always send them to an LIT and say, hey, you may qualify. You should reach out to your local LITC. They can help you with the collection issues, because I feel like that makes them feel a lot better about the process. And then for the actual settlement, just reminding the taxpayer, if at any time they get confused, frustrated, they just need to know what's going on, just to interrupt and say, hey, can we go to a breakout room? You know, I have some questions that I like to ask the volunteer. So those are kind of the big things. And I will let Bob add to that.
I don't know if there's very much to add. One thing I didn't mention before, I'm not sure if anybody else did, is you're going to have coordination issues working with partners, because they're not all necessarily on the same schedule as you are. You got 3 people on the team. I like to get the team together first before we talk to the taxpayer, before we have the settlement conference. And sometimes that's very difficult to do. It's going to come up occasionally, and be prepared for it, and go forward as you can. We've already talked, if you don't settle during the actual settlement meeting, you don't have that resolved, it may still be something that you can add value fairly easily in a very short period of time after the settlement meeting. You are not required to do that, but you can. And kind of just a reminder, we talked about malpractice insurance and all this type of thing. These are clients. These are clients. They're not just people you're talking to. And as a result of that, if you get documents, and you will, somebody on the team probably maybe at an LITC or a law firm or wherever, and they, because the person is a client, may be retaining documents for a period after that, as they do with all clients. But other volunteers on the team probably do not need to do that. And in that case, just delete those documents, delete the emails, delete everything, scrub your computer, and avoid any problems in the future. These can go a long period of time, but sometimes they're really quick, and it's a lot of fun. Have fun with it and get to know your teammates. You may run into some of them again on future events like this. There's one person I think I've been on 3 different teams with. A couple of people I've done at least 2, and it's great. Then you see them again and can reconnect. Have fun, enjoy, sign up this time, and then ongoing forever.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. And a couple more things. If you have feedback about this experience, we have made lots of tweaks over the last couple of years that have been really helpful, that have improved the program. And a lot of those have come from the surveys that we send out after. So please do complete the survey if you want to do it anonymously, if you'd rather attach your name to your feedback. For example, if you're assigned the middle role and you feel like you're ready to take on sort of like the lead attorney role on the next one, Michelle can note that. You can sort of explain that to her. You would obviously have to do that anonymously for her to know who you are. But if you'd like to give feedback, and it doesn't matter if your name's attached, our surveys are anonymous. We read all of them. Michelle reads everyone. She shares the information with me and we discuss it. Then we also share it with Spencer. We have a debrief meeting after all of these. He receives information and survey feedback from the IRS side, and we do from the volunteers, and then we compare notes. And it's been incredibly helpful. We also love all the, we appreciate the suggestions for improvement, but we also love all the nice comments that we get in the surveys about how great of an experience it is. We use those to recruit more volunteers and to advertise the program. Obviously you don't have to share positive feedback if you don't have any, but it seems like most people do. So we've been really heartened by the response that we've gotten from volunteers, but we've also been really informed by it as we continue to improve the program. So please do the survey, just a plug for that. And again, if you feel like you've been placed in the wrong level, wrong color code in Michelle's chart for this time, we can always fix that for next time. So please don't be offended. And if you have, we've also had feedback where people have said, I've done a bunch of these. This one was a miss. Like this client was just not a good fit for the program. My partner was not a good one, and that's fine. We don't take it personally. We really don't. Please do share that because it really is helpful for us to know, like, oh gosh, like Bob has been such a great volunteer and he had a rough one this time. Let's try to give him an easy one next time if it's at all possible. Or if you're like, hey, listen, I take on real tough clients in my day job. You have a tough case, give it to me. I'll take it. I don't mind it. So all those notes are helpful. And Michelle puts all of those. We have some of those people too, Bob. It's true. Michelle puts all those.
Oh, I was going to say, we did edit our conference request form internally to kind of prep for those issues going in based on the feedback. So now kind of we get feedback early on that this taxpayer may be extremely frustrated or get angry. And so we're able to kind of warn before people go in.
Maybe we'll put something on our registration form that's like, I have a high tolerance for people strong feelings about the tax code. Because if you are one of those people, we do have a few volunteers that are like, listen, I can take anything. So if you need someone to handle someone who's frustrated, I can talk anyone off a ledge. So if that's you, please do let us know. I have to give you those cases. And also, honestly, someone like Bob, who's very patient and has good people skills, is a good role model for, if you're sort of like the observer with a difficult client situation, watching someone handle that in a effective manner is one of the best lessons that you can teach another lawyer or teach a student. So it's amazing to watch someone who can handle people like that in action. And those are really good soft skills that we're also providing as part of the program. So
I got two quick tips if I can throw them out there. Just wanted to mention two things because we talked about it, I had on my list. If you're on a pro bono team coming in and representing a client, let the counsel attorney know who's going to be like leading the team and who's going to be requesting the information so we can make sure that we get it to where it needs to go. A lot of times we get a request from three and then the middle attorney or the second one is kind of taking the lead on it. So we just want to make sure that we're communicating appropriately with who we need to.
That's a really good point because, and if you are the lead attorney and you feel like you want to guide someone, the person who's sort of like less senior and have them be the main point of contact, like Spencer said, I think that happens sometimes. That's great too. We appreciate that.
Just let us know if it worked. The other thing, Emily mentioned it. If explain collection. If you're not as familiar with collection as like Emily may be, reach out to the IRS attorney. And if there's no revenue officer on your case or you're going to see one, ask if one can attend and explain collection options. There's limitations on what collection can and can't do. And obviously we can't settle cases contingent on you guys getting an election alternative or anything like that.
Right.
But they can come in and they can explain all the collection options to them. If they meet certain guidelines, we're able to kind of process an installment agreement or currently not collectible status after the case is closed. So they can do that. They can process payments. They can process returns. But a lot of them come in and are just explaining collections options, and they're able to identify and tell a taxpayer, if you request an installment agreement now, you're not going to get it because these two returns haven't been filed. So you need to take care of that first before you waste your time.
Right.
So our collection people can give that taxpayer customized collection advice as opposed to just a general advice that you all may be able to give.
Yeah, that's really helpful. But then also, if you really don't know anything about collection options, like call Emily. Call me and I'll have a quick one-on-one and then listen to the revenue officer that might have more specific. Close your ears, Spencer. Just get a quick rundown from someone who maybe works with low-income taxpayers, if that's what you're dealing with, just so that you know what their options are going to be before you meet with the revenue officer. That's all I'll say. And then if you're sitting here and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know half of the acronyms people used. Maybe I can't do this. Don't feel that way. Like really don't. Because you will, if you feel that way, then you should be in the second, in the second chair position. You should not have been assigned to be the lead attorney in this, meaning that there will be another person to guide you through it. We found that doing these kinds of trainings, like a 1 hour Zoom training, and then expecting people to jump in and run a pro bono case is just not effective, right? So that's why this program is meant to be, you do this training, you sort of get some tips, but this is not meant to teach you how to do a pro bono case. The person that we assign to you who's done these cases before, that person's meant to guide you through the process. And it's the like hands-on training that this program is really focusing on. Because I know when I was starting out doing pro bono cases as a junior tax attorney at a law firm, I would not have felt comfortable without like Bob there to walk me through the first couple times at least. So don't feel overwhelmed. We don't expect you to know everything if you're new to this. Anything else? Are there any other, we have, oh, right. I was going to also say, if you are interested in taking on more pro bono work and you don't know where to find it, the first stop is always your local low-income taxpayer clinic. We've been referring to LATCs in this session. If you can't find that on the internet or you don't know anyone, you tried contacting them and you didn't get a response, please reach out to me. I know lots of LATC folks around the country. I'm happy to help you. Another option is what we pitched earlier, LATC Connect, which is sort of like a matching service for virtual representation. Sometimes they'll match you with a case locally, sometimes not, depending on where you are and where the cases are. But if you go through that process and they do like a sort of like a background check and such, not like a criminal background check. They look through your background and get to know you a little better, and then they match you with a case. And it's a really great program. If you need the link to that, I put it in the chat, but it's also in the registration form. It's on the last page of the registration form when you registered. We also have other opportunities through the tax section. Right now, we're doing a program that's somewhat similar to this one with inmates. So folks who are currently incarcerated who have tax issues. It's a specific population. And as you might imagine, it can be tough to sort of work through issues when someone doesn't have the ability to come meet with you or, call or talk to you all the time. So one option for that too is if you work at a law firm, getting some folks together at your firm and taking on a bunch of cases from a single LATC, because we found that there are certain pockets of LATCs that have like huge long lists of inmates because one person gets good assistance and then they tell all their friends on the inside. So let me know if you want more information about that. And then I also put a link in the chat to our fellowship program. That's for recent graduates of JD or LLM programs or clerkships. The deadline on that is November 8th, so it's coming up really soon. But if you are interested in that and learning more about that, you can contact me about that as well. And if you are a law student, do the LATC at your law school if you have one, take tax classes. And I think we're out of time, so I'm going to let folks go. If you want to stay on and ask questions, you're welcome to. We can stay here for a few minutes and take questions from the group. But thanks for joining, everyone. I'll just wait a second to close it in case anyone has questions. Feel free to come off mute. Roberta, always for the question.
Of course. Oh, so I put it in the chat, but hello. So I've applied to be a member of a volunteer panel.
Oh, yeah, I see that. I know that. I don't think that would be a conflict, Spencer. I don't know. Oh, you can't see because you're on your iPad. She said volunteer panel. Okay, I don't think that would be a conflict.
Okay.
I'm not a
think
conflict
so either.
specialist, but
Yeah, I don't think that'd be a conflict.
Okay.
If that's a conflict,
we
I
all
don't know
have
what
conflicts,
Erin
right?
Collins does.
I mean,
Does she have to just sit in her office and doodle on a pad somewhere?
Yeah, and I tell
Because
you,
she's part of
That's
the
basically
IRS.
what I do, Bob. I'm a law professor.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that is what you do, yeah. Roberta, also, I saw you email Nina. I think that if you want to go through and get cases through her, you need to sign up for LATC Connect.
I did that, but I emailed Nina
okay.
before you posted the link,
see.
and I went on the link and I did the thing. So
Great.
Yeah.
Look at you.
All good, all good.
So quick.
All right.
Does anyone else here have any questions before we feel free to go off mute and ask if you have any questions? Nope. Nothing. Okay, this was great. Spencer, thank you so much. Emily,
Thank you all.
awesome
Thanks,
job.
Bob. Thanks, Emily.
Bob, you guys are the best. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks.